Let's talk CO2 magazine maintenance. Here we have the high kappa CO2 magazine and here we have the Glock magazine. They work pretty much the same, so if you have a different style of a CO2 magazine, there is a high chance the procedure and the parts that you will see will be very close or pretty much the same. So, without further ado, let's get started with the maintenance. Now, I will show you a complete disassembly and maintenance of every single part that is on this magazine. If your magazine is functioning properly, you don't need to go in depth and remove the valve, for example. If this valve is not giving you trouble, just don't touch it. There is no need to do anything with it. If you want, you can just skip to the part that is concerning you and you want to see how I maintain it, then please go ahead. We, in this case, will start with complete disassembly so we can get to every single thing and do it properly. Also, one thing to mention is that, as you can see, here we have very easy access to this part. Here we don't. That is not a problem. We will talk about it a little bit later when I get to that. We will do it with this magazine, so let's get started. First, press this pin, remove the base. We will not need that. Then we will take out the screw right here. We will also set that aside and we will go ahead and remove the pin from the bottom so we can remove the spring. Just push on it, it will fall out and this will slide out with the follower. Now quickly let's mention how it works here. Here we have a screw, you just need to unscrew it and you will be able to remove the bottom part as well. So, minor differences, but nothing too substantial. Next thing we will do is punch out this pin. Now, if you look closely, you might be able to see that one side has like serrated edges and the other one doesn't. Now, it is better to punch it out from the smooth side so you don't drive the thicker end through the whole magazine. I've done it before, happened to me, I made that mistake. It's not the end of the world, but try to figure out which side has the serrations. Depends on the magazine, not every magazine is the same. Try and see. This one is from this side. We will punch it out just a little bit. Okay, exactly a good example of making a mistake. I see that there are no serrations on this side, so I will stop. I will not drive it the whole way through and I will just reverse it. And as you can see here, we do have the serrations, so we can move ahead and take it out completely. This will allow us to remove the feeding lips with the gas route right there, so we have nice access to it. And the last thing that we need to remove is the valve. For that, we will use a valve tool like this. Maybe you have the rounded one. Anything that will allow you to unscrew it easily will do the trick. Make sure not to slip off the brass slots because you could actually round them off and damage it, so make sure your placement is always correct. Alright, here we have the valve and the empty shell. Now we can proceed with cleaning and maintenance. Now the first thing that we will do is we will take care of the threads on this big screw that is putting pressure onto the capsule and also the thread that, where it goes to. You want to keep these threads clean because if you have something on them, it could happen that they just lock up and it's gonna be very hard to unscrew it and it could even go as far as damaging the thread completely. So these two threads, we want them clean. There are plenty of ways to do maintenance. There is multiple tools that you can use, from a brush to alcohol, wipes, soapy water works well. All of this is at your disposal. It depends what you have available and how bad it is with the dirt inside. Here we can brush it off. That's one way to do it. We don't really need to go as far as using alcohol, but we will do that a little bit later. I want to give you the tools or the options and you decide how far you need to go. Not everything is always the same. Sometimes it's just dusty. Sometimes you drop it in a puddle. Those two things require different sort of cleaning. So brush, you know, when you just want to brush off the dust, perfectly enough. You can take it a step further, take rubbing alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, and if you feel like you have some grease or something that you cannot remove with the brush, use a cloth like this. You can also put the alcohol on the brush and just wipe off the threads. I'm gonna do it rather quickly because I want to keep this video short, but you take your time, get in between the threads, and also here make sure that you clean it off nicely. Like I said, you can put the alcohol onto the brush. That's a good way to get in between the threads. Make sure it's nice and clean, and then wipe it off again. Same goes for this end. Try to get a brush in there and, you know, make sure it's clean. Don't put any lubrication on these two parts because that would attract dirt, which is exactly what we don't want in there. This part is now clean. Let's proceed with the BB channel. And this is a part that you probably want to clean on a somewhat regular basis, because if you get dirt in the channel, the magazine will stop feeding BBs because it will just block the BBs, and you know, the spring will not be strong enough to get in there. Now again, we have multiple ways. Maybe we can even use this thing, the barrel cleaning rod. It fits nicely in there. We can make it longer so we get to every single part. And now again, it depends. If you only want to brush off the dust, you can totally do this. And we could call it a day. If you see some oil or something greasy in there, we can again use alcohol. We put it on the brush here, and we make sure that it's 100% clean and the BBs are able to feed nicely. That's one way to do it. If you don't have a maintenance kit, you can also use a brush. Here we have a good one that has longer brushes, so it can actually get in there. Same thing again, you just want to make it clean. You can brush it like this. Again, you can also use alcohol. This thing, you can also dump it in water, soapy water, slightly warm, and that allows you to clean it nicely, also removes oils and stuff. Just use a brush, soapy water in your bathroom. Make sure that you dry it if you use this method. Put it somewhere where it's slightly warm, so you don't start assembling it when there is still, you know, water or moisture inside. We don't really need that. I will not do it because I don't have a bathroom here and soapy water, but that is also an option. One more thing that is totally doable is using Q-tips. That cleans it pretty nicely and they are easily accessible. My goal is to give you options and you see what you have at home. You can do this. You can also put alcohol on the tip of the Q-tip and do exactly the same as we've done. Make sure that it's nice and clean. As you can see, there was something. Definitely a good idea. Now, some people don't like this because it can leave like little strands behind. I've done it so many times, never had an issue with these strands, but if that's something you are worried about, don't use Q-tips or get compressed air. Maybe you have a compressor at home and at the end just blow everything out. This should also work. They are super small and fine. I'm sure you will not have issues with this. I just want to mention it because some people don't like Q-tips for this particular reason. So let's just acknowledge that and let's move on to the next thing. Just one little warning. It might sound like a good idea to decrease the friction in this channel by adding some oil. That's absolutely not what you want to do. Adding oil here, because that would get stuck onto the BB. The BB goes through the barrel, it contacts the hop-up, and the hop-up is working on friction. This removes friction, so the hop-up would stop working and the oil would get absolutely into your gun. Not what you want to do. Don't put oil anywhere near this area. Next thing we will take care of is this flat seal that seals onto the CO2 capsule. Here we have two different styles of magazine. We have this one and we have this one. Here we have access, here we don't have access. Now, what do we do? If you have this magazine, probably nothing, because there is nothing, or there is not much that can go inside, any dirt, dust. It is enclosed, so you don't really need to clean it, or it's very unlikely. Here, it's easily accessible, so dirt can absolutely go in there. What we want to do with this seal is to just keep it clean. Take your brush and just brush it off. Make sure that the stuff can fall out, and that's pretty much it. Again, you don't want grease on this part or oil. The only thing you need to do is to keep it clean. You could use alcohol if you feel like there is grease on it and dust is sticking to it. That is a way to remove that. You can also take a cloth, try to get in there, clean it, or we have these Q-tips. You can try to clean it with this one. Again, the strings, if you are worried about that, go back to your brush, brush it off. This one, you probably don't have it, but maybe you can get it easily. It's a good way to, reach inside of this magazine. Again, it's very unlikely that you will have to do it, but I just want to show you that it's possible. So we would get in there and we would try to clean it from the inside. I cannot imagine dirt getting in there, but that is a way. Now, what you can also use is compressed air and just blow everything out, keep it nice, clean and dry. We will set this magazine aside for now. That is pretty much the only difference. And we will move on to the valve that is right here. Now with this valve, you see that we have basically two sealing surfaces. We have one O-ring here and we have one seal right there. We want to keep them clean. So we will brush them off. The O-ring, we can also go through it. Also, this cleans the thread, just in case something got on there. Make sure that it's nice and clean. After it's clean, I would recommend using a tiny bit of silicone oil. I don't like to put it right on there because that's usually resulting in more oil than we need. So I just put a tiny bit on my finger and I'm just gonna put it onto the seal surfaces. The reason why I don't want too much silicone oil here is that when the gas goes in and out through these holes into the gas route, if you put too much silicone oil, it will get into the system of the pistol, onto the bucking, and that's what we don't want. So we will just smear it around with the finger, make sure that it's lightly, that there is a tiny little bit on the surfaces, and just to maintain them nicely. That's pretty much all you need to do. You should not be required to do more. If you see any damage, dents, especially on this hard rubber, and you are having leak issues, then it's probably time to replace it, because this one is very hard. If it's dented, there's not much you can do. We have the valve ready to go. Next thing we will take a look at is this gas route. Here, we basically just want to make sure that it's clean. This one is perfectly fine, didn't fall into a puddle or anything. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna take a little bit of silicone oil, or you can also use grease. Grease is a little bit, it's thicker. So if you are worried about spreading oil everywhere, grease is a good option. But if you only use tiny amount on the surfaces where it actually matters, from the bottom and the top, it's gonna be perfectly fine. We don't really need to distinguish between like thick or thin silicone oil, because we disassembled everything and we have a good access to all these different parts. So no need to have a thinner silicone oil that kind of, just flows into areas. Doesn't matter. We are putting it right where it needs to be. And this is pretty much it, just to keep it nice and maintained. When it comes to feeding lips, the only thing you need to do is make sure they are clean. Again, you can use a brush, you can use soapy water. I would not necessarily go for alcohol in this case. This will be perfectly fine. All right. Now, before we start assembling everything together, we are pretty much done with all the individual parts. Just inspect this part, make sure that it's clean. Again, bucket of soapy water will do the trick. If you see something here where the gas root is sitting, again, brush is your good friend. Make sure that it's clean. We looped the gas root a little bit, so that will be just fine. Again, we don't want excess silicone oil anywhere. All right, all of the parts are clean. All of the parts have been lubricated a little bit, so we can proceed with the assembly. So we will start by putting the gas root in place. Make sure that this is nice and aligned, that it's not pinched in a weird way, and we can put that back. Now we take the pin. Now it's a good time to mark where the serrated edge is, so you know next time when you want to do maintenance, so you are not struggling again, maybe driving the thicker end through the whole magazine. You can take a marker and mark it according to your preference. I'm gonna just put it in there and lightly tap it in place, make sure that it's flush. Make sure that it's flush with both ends, just like that. We can now proceed with the follower. Actually, follower also should not be dirty. Again, soapy water, a good thing to do if you feel like it's dirty, greasy, or anything like that. All right, now we take the pin. There is a thinner end. That one will go first, or in case of the high kappa magazine, it's a screw. See, I can just put it there with my finger, perfectly fine. I overextended it a little bit. This one is not coming any further, so we will just push it in the right position so this can freely move up and down. Now we can take our valve and we will put it in. We can start. No, we cannot. We don't have enough grip, so we will just use the valve tool and screw it in place. Now, how much you should tighten it? Rather less than more. I'm just gonna use a tiny bit of force, just like that, and that's perfectly enough. You can always tighten it more. Once you tighten it too much, it's already too much. So rather use less force. Now, in no particular order, we can just put this back in place. We made sure that it's nice and clean. We will align the threads, feel until it grabs, and just put it there for storage. Last but not least, we have the base plate, and now our magazine is ready to go for the next game. All right, that's been it for the maintenance. Now, there is many different ways and tools and lubricants that you can use. Depends on the magazine that you have, how dirty it is. But in the end, it boils down to what you have available, because maintenance is better than no maintenance from time to time. Just make sure to use the appropriate lubricants and tools. You want to use like a silicone oil. Some people don't like that. They prefer PTFE-based lubricants. Grease, it's perfectly fine. As long as you don't put too much in it, it's gonna be just fine. If you have a super dirty magazine, then maybe the bucket of soapy water is a good idea, because you can really clean it nicely. If you just want to do a quick little checkup and make sure everything is fine, this is perfectly appropriate. All right, there you have it. See you in the next one.